geopolitical rivalry over semiconductors unfolding in the near future? Would it have a detrimental impact on the development of AI, or would we see alternatives being developed?
The very impact on AI, I think, is dynamic trade-off between disruption and diversification. So the geopolitical rivalry poses a clear challenge for AI development in the short term, but it's a powerful catalyst for long-term innovation and resilience.
Hello and welcome to Technocracy. I'm Heena Goswami, editorial consultant with IGPP, Institute for Governance, Policies and Politics, New Delhi. In our last episode of Technocracy, we discussed what semiconductors are and how integral they are to the AI revolution. And as we are all aware, every nation wants to champion the AI race, but it is China and US that are currently in the lead. These two countries are fighting over who controls semiconductors and chips. The chip war, which is a name attributed by many authors to this technological rivalry between the US and China in the field of semiconductor manufacturing, constitutes a significant chapter in the global competition for technology dominance, and both the countries for more than a decade are trying to tilt the scales in their own favor. So, in this race, the US took the lead, and during his first term, President Donald Trump made several major moves to strengthen the US semiconductor industry. As part of his America First agenda, he focused on securing the supply chain and bringing manufacturing back to the US. His administration also helped lay the foundation for the Chips for America Act, which aimed to fund domestic semiconductor production and research. One of Trump's biggest achievements in this area was convincing Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, the world's largest contract chip maker from Taiwan, to invest $12 billion in building a chip factory in Arizona in 2020. Later, when President Joe Biden took office, he continued and expanded on these efforts. His administration introduced even stricter export controls, especially on technologies like AI chips and semiconductor manufacturing tools. This approach, known as the small yard, tall fence strategy, focused on tightly protecting a small group of critical technologies while allowing trade in other areas to continue. Biden also signed the Chips and Science Act of 2022, which provided $53 billion in government funding for domestic chip production. This law sparked over $395 billion in private investment and created more than 115,000 jobs. It also placed further limits on China's access to advanced US technologies. The current Trump administration, as of 2025, has taken an even tougher stance. Trump announced a 100% tariff on foreign made semiconductors. However, the companies that build research or manufacturing facilities in the US would be exempt from these tariffs unless they fail to meet the investment promises. In response to these US actions, China has been working hard to reduce its dependence on foreign chips. It is investing heavily in research and development to strengthen its own chip making industries. China's long term goal is to build a fully self sufficient semiconductor supply chain as part of its wider plan to become the global tech power. The chip conflict is not just a fight between two countries, it affects the entire world. Other nations and international companies are caught in the middle, trying to balance partnerships, supply chains, and political alliances. While the US leads in designing advanced chips, mainly thanks to companies like Intel and Apple, it still depends heavily on other countries for manufacturing and raw material. In fact, about 75% of the production process for US designed chips happens in Taiwan and China. Additionally, many rare material used in chip making come from China. China, for its part, has been expanding its production of older generation chips called the legacy chips, and by 2023, it produced 31% of the global supply. As a countermeasure to the US restrictions, China has also banned the export of important materials like gallium and germanium, which are used in high tech and military devices. This is a major move since China controls most of the global supply of these materials, 98% of gallium and 68% of germanium. Between both these superpowers is called Taiwan. Taiwan is home to Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, which produces about half of the semiconductors produced worldwide and the most advanced chips. Taiwan's political status is complex and disputed, with Beijing viewing it as a breakaway province and Taiwan's democratic government asserting its de facto sovereignty. Beijing maintains its One China principle, which asserts that Taiwan is an inseparable part of China that must be reunified with the mainland by force if necessary. And in recent years, Beijing has intensified diplomatic, economic, and military pressure on Taiwan. However, while the United States officially acknowledges Beijing's One China position but does not endorse its claim of sovereignty over Taiwan. Further, it provides Taiwan with defensive military equipment under the Taiwan Relation Act. Needless to say, Taiwan is caught between a rock and a hard place, and rising geopolitical tensions and technological rivalry between the US and China further makes its position precarious. To know more about the geopolitical and ideological aspects of this technological rivalry, today we are joined by Dr. Stephen Hai. Dr. Hai is an assistant professor in tech innovation and digital entrepreneurship at Entrepreneurship and Enterprise Hub, Xi'an Jiaotong-Liverpool University. His research sheds light on political economy of emerging tech innovation, digital entrepreneurship, and sustainable development in China and global techno-developmental states. He is also an affiliate fellow at King's Institute for Artificial Intelligence, King's College London, and serves on the editorial advisor board for Artificial Intelligence in Education, an Asian review of political economy. So, Dr. Hai, welcome to Technocracy. Tell us, how is that a small chip, crucial as it may be for the development of artificial intelligence technology, finds itself at the heart of a geopolitical rivalry and has the power to reshape the world order? And who are the major players in this race for semiconductors? Are there any historical precedents for such a competition?
And first and foremost, thanks for having me, Heena. And I really enjoy, the invitation, also the very in-depth understanding through the question regarding this emergingly critical topic on semiconductor and beyond. Well, I think first and foremost, regarding the question, the geopolitical gravity of semiconductor comes from the functionality and reality that it is a foundational technology for artificial intelligence, making semiconductor at this moment seemingly like the ultimate contestation for global tech leadership. So the chip themselves are the core enabler of national power in the 21st century. So therefore, the intersection of advanced chip and AI has created a new arena of geopolitical competition that is fundamentally reshaping the world order. In this nexus regard, AI serves as a strategic imperative, not only for commercial purpose, but also for the very purpose of national military complex. So it had this dual use nature as well. In the meantime, semiconductor, especially the advanced one, is a choke point for computing. The race for AI leadership is now less about software. It's more about who controls compute, the specialized chip like Nvidia GPU, and the infrastructure around the ecosystem. So meanwhile, geopolitical vulnerability and strategic responses are the core concerns. The extreme geographic concentration of semiconductor supply chain has turned its very nature of commercial vulnerability into profound geopolitical risk, further intensify this rivalry. So give all of us a very concrete example that it's a classic problem, a single point of failure. Nowadays, let's say more than 75% global semiconductor manufacturing capacity is clustered in East Asia. So especially when we look into the networking, the advanced chip manufacturing now is heavily located in TSMC, which on the island of Taiwan. So in this regard, the very growing evidence of weaponization of semiconductor supply chain and make it sometimes a collateral damage for the strategic imperative for self-reliance and also this open innovation ecosystem within that context, let's see. So, and also regarding your following question, who are the major players in this race, right? It's indeed very insightful question. Yeah, the question itself is pretty complex. The global semiconductor competition is not a simple trade war. It is a multidimensional struggle for technological supremacy, which is nowadays rooted in a rather fragmented but deeply interdependent innovation complex. So in this regard, the major players, from my point of view, is increasingly intertwined with the state, companies, and the higher education institute. So if we look at the state level, we have this very classic champions, the United States, especially regarding the design and equipment. And we also have the TSMC from Taiwan, the very advanced manufacturing and foundry. South Korea in terms memory and advanced foundry. And then we talk about Netherlands and Japan being the leading player in the field of equipment and materials. Now also clearly we all have been witnessing the gradually increasing rise of China in terms mature nodes, assembling, test, and packaging. So in terms enterprises, we have this very specialized giant in each specific sector and innovation supply chain. For fabless design, we have Nvidia, AMD, Qualcomm from the United States. And in terms of foundry, which is manufacturing, we have TSMC from Taiwan and Samsung from the South Korea. And equipment software, of course, ASML from Netherlands, Applied Material from the United States. Well, regarding the higher education institute and innovation complex, I think universities are now the foundational source of talent and early stage research, R&D for revolutionary advancement. So in this one, we have US system and Chinese system. Well, in meantime, as what I assume we will discuss it later, the emerging innovation tech systems such as India, such as Gulf states, are also growing rapidly. So, and I think regarding the remaining part, historical precedent, and I think that's a very interesting question. I think the answer to the question is really like, yes, there are indeed some historical precedent, but and another part is, no, we haven't really witnessed this similar development level competition before. And also for the current context, which if we think about that echoes any previous state-driven technology rivalry, we have back to the 1980s, the semiconductor competition between the US and Japan. Well, in the meantime, even previous time, the US we're talking about too much China, so that's a tendency, right? So then previously the US and the former Soviet Union competition in the space and arm race arenas. But I think the more unprecedented nature of this current competition is this Chinese and US chip competition is unprecedented in terms of its width and depth. So, so, so in a more specific term is we have this control of full stack regarding semiconductor innovation ecosystem. And we also have this clustering and relating effect on AI and the foundational technology. And in the meantime, we have been all chasing about the latest news that now the talent is really the enduring source innovation and even sometimes national weapon in this regards. So a quick wrap up is the current geopolitical environment has thus transformed the semiconductor from a mere industry component into the most powerful tool of economic geopolitical statecraft, making the competition itself more like a defining feature, a new world order. Thank you.
In this technological race and geopolitical realm, how do you evaluate the US export control measures over China for leading edge semiconductors? Do you think the US's export control measures would choke off China's development of the frontier semiconductor industry, or rather have a reverse impact, accelerating China's indigenous innovation for technological breakthrough?
This is such an exceptionally nuanced question, also approach of evaluation. Well, I think the U.S. export control measures on China's leading edge semiconductor should be described at this moment the double-edged policy of containment and a crystallization. So, well, in the short term, the intended effect of technology denial are really and truly impactful to China's breakthrough in terms of the very frontier tech innovation, which is beyond the semiconductor industry. In the long run, it will be unintended, have this unintended consequences that could serve as a powerful acceleration, indigenous innovation and for China to develop its own, let's say, not only the version, but its own robustness of this tech innovation ecosystem. So the US-led control has successfully, at this moment, created critical choke point and significantly slowing China's direct, commercially driven path to the technological frontier, which, if we're looking to more specific, from supply chain and manufacturing to AI innovation and high-end computing and to foreign investment exchanges, not exchanging in terms of knowledge and open source R&D. And also, I won't say it's suffocating, but it's definitely have a huge negative impact on the China's domestic companies' performance, both at home and abroad. However, paradoxically, this strategy has become sometimes like the single greatest motivator for China's whole nation efforts to grow into robust ecosystem self-sufficiency in terms of innovation. And the overall evaluation to me is it is indeed a geopolitical paradox. The export control has created similarly like short-time win for the states. But in the long run, this decoupling and separation and fragmentation will cause not only China, but also the United States, but also the whole world, it's the pace and innovation progress. Yeah.
But the fact that China is still able to make some technological breakthroughs, as we saw in the case of DeepSeek, is it reflection of China's adaptability amidst the whole process, or does it further indicate that there's an ongoing reordering of the world order in the larger picture and where the US cannot always dictate the terms?
This is a very essential inquiry, and this moves to the like sustainable view regarding this larger picture of global competition. And to make a simple answer, I think indeed I do agree with you. I think the U.S. export control has forced China to become more adaptive and to accelerate its evolution in in the whole innovation ecosystem beyond the single dimension semiconductor ecosystem. So in this regards, we should divide the diverse role, a different stakeholder within the ecosystem. We have the state level, both from the central and to the local level. Well, in the meantime, we have diverse role play by the market players within China and also the general society level. So back to the state level, the central and local state in China has demonstrated a very high degree of strategic learning by transforming the external pressure and threat into the mandate of centralized action, deploying resources into the area that the Western and the US has shelled its, let's see, its power. So we have this political justification for fundings, which China has been utilizing its sovereign state fund to support and sponsor the long-term strategic development of the semiconductor and the AI industry. And also that both level of state have utilized its capacity to conduct policy evaluation and the counter-section strategies constantly regarding the ongoing confrontation and competition. And also for the company and corporate level is the Chinese company and multinational companies with Chinese roots have displayed remarkable resilience and operational diversification in the face of supply choke. So we all have been witnessing the forced indigenous substitution and innovation, especially regarding some repetitive companies such as Huawei, and also the R&D acceleration based on the domestic Chinese companies' innovation ecosystem have been also emerging. But in the meantime, this choke point moment to the Chinese company is reconsideration and re-enhancement of supply chain resilience. So firms are actually actively engaged in friend-shoring and multi-sourcing to its own context. So then we notice in the fast evolution of its innovation ecosystem in China from the higher education institute and industry fusion, and also the technological diversification to, let's say, develop semiconductor and apply this development into the real application in a broader networking of technology development, such as electronic vehicle, such as Internet things, such as automation, manufacturing. So in summary, the US export control are acting as a powerful, though involuntary accelerator to China's techno development and breakthrough. And well, I think then you asked a very big question. So whether it indicate an ongoing reordering in the world order. If you do agree with me, I think that's a part of core thesis of contemporary geopolitical moment. Regardless, it's on the tech innovation context. Yes, indeed, I feel like that's a very beginning of multipolar world order in making. I feel like the tech innovation arena is actively supplementing the geopolitical paradigm shift away from unipolar dominance and now towards a more multipolar fragmented system. Well, and also the process is characterized by intense conflicts and search for dynamic stability.
How do you see other emerging players, such as India, the Gulf states, Southeast Asia, in this competition between the US and China?
Well, I feel like it's a very timely question, right? The competition for technology supremacy is no longer a bilateral standoff. It is more a profound global reordering where there's emerging players like India, the Gulf state, Southeast Asia are seizing the geopolitical and commercial opportunity to become the indispensable nodes in this multipolar world order. So, well, to me, I think there are five dimensions could serve as analytical framework for this question and for different emerging powers amid the US-China competition in the tech innovation and beyond. I think the first one is the market potential, both the domestic market potential and also the access to the regional and the global market at both the state level and the market level. The second one is the talent potential. The third one is the innovation ecosystem potential, both the domestic innovation ecosystem in terms diversification, indigenous innovation, resilience, open source capacity, completion of the innovation supply chain, and also the very integration with global open innovation and R&D system. The fourth is institutional capacity from the central to the local level. The fifth is the motivation and vision, whether there are a collective agenda making from the central, local, or as well as leading market forces level to commit to the future tech innovation vision and for its own state, own ecosystem of innovation and tech development. So I think in this regard, India is leveraging its established base in design and gigantic domestic market to move beyond, I feel like, being a consumer and to become a producer, inventor, and fundamentally reshaping the global ecosystem of tech innovation. So if we look into more detailed, such as the talent potential, nowadays, India contributed more than 20% of the world's semiconductor design engineers by the mid 2025. This established high-end talent pool is its enduring competitive strengths, placing India at the upstream end of this innovation value chain. And also, India has its very robust and rapidly growing innovation ecosystem, shifting from R&D only to integrated manufacturing supply chain, which is Indian government now call it from the chips to stop program beyond the simple semiconductor ecosystem. Therefore, comparing with all this detail, India to me nowadays is de facto should be counted as one of the major players in the field rather than an emerging major player. So what also keeps impressing me is that the vibrancy and strong momentum in Indian tech innovation ecosystem in the full circle of innovation chain from the upstream R&D and to the end commercialization and application in both the domestic and global market, representing scholar from the innovation and the business studies field, Professor Robin Klingler-Vidra and Professor Ramon Pacho from King's College have comprehensively elaborated the diverse role of startup ecosystem of technology economy in the East Asia and how it could contribute to the progress of established innovation ecosystem driven by big company and supplement institutional capacities of the state at different levels. So in this case, India could also be a very classic case. And I feel like the vivid evidence of creative destruction and fulfillment. Of course, we have other emerging and fastly growing players. The Gulf states is indeed emerging as one of the major players in the field. And also we have been witnessing it, the growing strategic hub for diverse interests, different major players around the world. At this moment, primarily, I think Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar are using their immense sovereign wealth to transform themselves into the AI innovation and value chain player rather than the conventional fossil fuel player. To position themselves at a critical juncture, this compute and the data arena sector of the AI risk. Well, at another front, likewise, Southeast Asia is now being the very, if not the most heated arena for China, US, Japan, South Korea, EU, and even India to practice, compete, collaborate, and evolve themselves. So now Southeast Asia serve as a crucial existing manufacturing back end and also geopolitical space where US, China, and other major players translate themselves into supply chain diversification. So then looking into the detail, we had Singapore become the very pool of talent, institutional capacity, and open R&D innovation. Malaysia being the place for open innovation, market potential exploration, and the manufacturing place. And Vietnam has been increasingly fast to upgrade itself, become the supply chain and manufacturing place, hot place for the essential supply of semiconductor and AI industry.
My last question: how do you see the geopolitical rivalry over semiconductors unfolding in the near future? Would it have a detrimental impact on the development of AI, or would we see alternatives being developed? And what would be the way forward according to you?
Well, thank you. First things first, I feel like that's a multi-trillion US dollar problem. So probably we can open a consulting firm and penetrate into this blue ocean market. But back to the question itself, beyond the commercial purpose, right? Which I think without doubt, this geopolitical rivalry over semiconductor and AI is not only a contemporary trade problem, right? It's more like structural realignment that fundamentally altering the structure of global innovation beyond semiconductor, beyond AI. Well, in this near future, we will see the system moves towards a state of dynamic instability where intense confrontation coexist with, I think, with ongoing forging a new parallel and resilient ecosystem. So in the near future, multiple polar system and multi-parallel tech universe may be the scenery we will be witnessing and we keep witnessing itself. So it regards as fragmentation of different industrial sectors and blocks. For example, the US-centric block, the China-centric block, and the neutral and diversified blocks. And also the very growing and evidence rise competition beyond tech sector and beyond state level into corporate level, into society level, even individual level will be pretty clear. Well, regarding the very impact on AI, I think is dynamic trade-off between disruption and diversification. So the geopolitical rivalry poses a clear challenge for AI development in the short term, but it's a powerful catalyst for long-term innovation and resilience. So sometimes we'll see the short-term detrimental effect to quite some economies and companies. But it's long-term strategic development of not only alternative system, but diversification of a multiple system indeed. So look way forward, another multi-trillion dollar question. I feel like we really have this necessity to think about the commercial potential for this one. I think the only viable path forward is to embrace competition plus cooperation, this competition dynamic. So then we will have this strategic regionalization, not a total decoupling. And also, I think we have changeability regarding standardization, safety, and the innovation network into the global and the regional R&D and open source innovation ecosystem. And I think the fundamental truth is that really decoupling with US is deglobalization. Meanwhile, decoupling with China is deglobalization as well. So competition and collaboration are happening simultaneously, and the competition will encourage collaboration, when in the meantime, collaboration will create and intensify competition. So essentially speaking, we are all part of a complex, interconnected whole. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for this very detailed and very to-the-point conversation. Thank you so much for sparing time for this interview.
Thanks for having me. It's really lovely to talk with you.
If you enjoyed watching this episode of Technocracy, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. For more AI related conversation, you can also watch IGPP Expert Talks AI Special Series.